My name is Staci Gruber, Gruber. I'm the director of the Cognitive and Clinical Neuroimaging Core and the director of the Marijuana Investigations for Neuroscientific Discovery program at McLean Hospital and associate professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. It's really important to remember that the brain continues to develop throughout adolescence and emerging adulthood. Long ago and far away, we thought the brain was finished with regard to development by the time we hit puberty. We know from series of brain imaging studies that that's not true, and adolescents and emerging adults actually continue to develop throughout the second and into the third decade of life. The last part of the brain to become fully developed is the frontal cortex, just behind your eyebrows. That's the part that's really important for things like controlling impulsivity and making sure you're making good sound decisions, planning things effectively, inhibiting inappropriate responses. One of the studies that we conducted several years ago was focused on individuals who use cannabis and those who don't. Remember, this is a very comprehensive study where people come in and they have a clinical and a diagnostic interview to make sure that there's nothing else, quote, going on. They do lots of cognitive tasks, and then ultimately we do brain imaging. We also have them do some other types of tasks. This is a task that requires people to inhibit an inappropriate response. So, words printed in a different color ink than you spell. You can't help but read a word printed in your native language. Can't help it. And what I will ask you to do is inhibit reading and instead name the color of the ink. And so you're asking your brain to basically inhibit an overlearned response tendency reading in favor of something less automatic, color naming. And here's what we see. So the blue bar on the left, this is accuracy on this task. The blue bar, healthy controls, people who are not using cannabis. And then we have the cannabis users split into early and late onset, prior to age 16, later, after 16. So the minty green bar, the early onset, the darker green bar, the late onset. And what you see is a statistically significant difference in the early onset, folks. Way lower accuracy.
Huge difference.
Huge difference, right? And if you look actually at the late onset, folks, not so different. Our lab focuses pretty heavily on cognitive performance, and the frontal cortex is responsible for these frontal executive tasks, inhibiting overlearned response tendencies, impulsivity, all those things, good decision making. And these are just some examples of these kinds of tasks that we administer. Suffice it to say that across the board, the early onset cannabis users performed much more poorly than the healthy controls, those are the non-users, and those with later onset. In contrast, there were very few differences in the late onset users and the controls. That's interesting. Yeah. Age matters. Age matters. We have lots of different ways of assessing these individuals. I think we're very fortunate. We have a one-stop shop approach in terms of neuroimaging where we could put somebody in a scanner and look at brain structure. Diffusion tensor imaging, amazingly cool. It's a functional technique that gives us a structural image that allows us to look at the integrity or the organization of the white matter. So if we think of gray matter again as the hard-working neurons in your brain, and white matter as the ability to connect one brain region to another brain region, or the ways in which the brain is connected, really, really important to look at that. Age matters. Yeah. Age matters, right? Something also that was very interesting that came out of this was the earlier the age of onset, so the earlier people started using cannabis, the lower the white matter fiber tract integrity. So earlier use, lower white matter. Lower white matter, fiber tract integrity, higher impulsivity. This is like the perfect storm.
How does it show up for young people in terms of behavior?
Everybody has had the experience of telling somebody who was in their teen years, I asked you to do blah, blah, and somehow you didn't do it. So they may not necessarily be able to multitask and listen to what you're doing while they're doing something else. So when we introduce things, not just cannabis, it isn't just cannabis, but other substances, alcohol, anything, we're asking for an awful lot. And again, it's a system that's immature, so there's only so much we're going to get. So you may see all sorts of challenging behaviors from kids. That is sort of an extreme version of what most people report they see in their teens. Not necessarily always able to inhibit inappropriate responses.
You mentioned recovery. Say you've already, you started when you're 15, now you're 22. You are learning that, okay, this might have impacted me in so many ways. I'd like it to turn around. Is that possible?
There is certainly evidence suggesting that if you were to reduce your use or stop use, many things that we have seen actually tend to go back the other way. Maybe not everything, but certainly there have been plenty of studies that suggest that cessation or reduction in use may actually help, especially with cognitive performance, which is where most people worry. in terms of being able to perform certain types of tasks. I think that the brain is rather remarkable. And so we like to tell teens and emerging adults, and again, you never want to be perceived as someone who's saying to, don't ever try this, don't ever do it. It's not a message that gets translated very well, right? Just say no did not work. So we use just not yet. Just not yet. You're an adult for a very long time. And if you give your brain the opportunity to become fully developed, you'll probably have a better go with it.